everyone for coming. The first thing on the agenda, I guess I'm supposed to read this note, right? Please note that this meeting will be open to the public, however, all social distancing guidelines must be adhered to. Public comments will be addressed at the discretion of the chair. A recording of the meeting will be posted on the West Bridgewater Community Access Video on Demand website. I think that covers our obligations there. The first thing on the agenda is to approve the meeting minutes of March 18th. Did everybody have a chance to read those? And do I have a motion?
Motion to approve March 18th.
Thanks, Scott. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Mo. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. The next thing on the agenda is to accept the meeting minutes of March 24th for review. Do I have a motion?
We have a motion to accept the meeting minutes of March 24th for review.
Thank you, Mo. Do I have a second? Thank you, Cheryl. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Anybody opposed? So the next thing on the agenda is to review and vote on recommendations for the FY22 budget for town meeting. So does everybody have a copy of the budget? It's a nice two-page summary. Before we do that, I know in the past, I think maybe Mo, you had to recuse yourself from the conservation one. I just want to see if
Yeah, I didn't know
anybody-
if we were gonna vote in total for all of these with exceptions to one or two items. Instead of
Yeah.
line by line, I don't know
Yeah, I guess,
what David thinks, but
if anybody needs to recuse themselves, we could put that one aside. I think that if they do have a conflict, we do have to.
yeah, I'll
handle
have
that,
to
right?
recuse myself from conservation.
Okay. Is there anybody else that might have a conflict of interest that they need to recuse?
On this night now, on the streets, I need to recuse myself.
I
When we
beg
get
your
to the
pardon?
when we get to warrant articles, I need to recuse myself on
Warrant
the streets.
Okay. Okay. So we have, if we put the conservation one aside, remind me what number that one is.
1710.
1710. Okay, so if we put that one aside, does anybody have any issues with any of the budgets? Do we just want to focus on the ones that have changes, or does anybody want to discuss the other ones that don't have changes?
No.
Can we just need to go through and kind of put the whole and kind of do that?
We can do that if you want to do it that way.
I mean, I think a lot of the budgets are just kind of short it, is that all we're trying to do here?
Yeah, we can go through. So, you know, the numbers got cut off on mine. The moderator one, is everybody all right with that one? Board of Selectmen?
Yes.
FinCom? FinCom Reserve? Accountant? Assessors? You want to talk about that one?
What are we agreeing to?
So we want to know
Put a
if there are
hold on
any
the
that
line
you
if you
want to
want.
put a hold on so we can talk about them.
But are we going to the Board of Selectmen number, or are we going to the number, like what column are we saying we're happy with here?
So what we're saying are there any ones that you want to talk about? We can talk about the ones with the changes, which the assessors would be
Okay.
one of.
So we'll hold the assessors, please.
Okay. Treasurer collector? Town council? Information systems? Cable TV committee? Town clerk? Elections registration? Concom? Open Space Committee, Agricultural Commission, Planning Board, Board of Appeals, Rent Control, ADA Commission, Insurance, Town Hall, Municipal Building Needs, Wastewater Treatment, the Police Department, Fire Department, Building Inspector, Gas and Plumbing. Cannot even read that. Oh, ceilings of weights and measures. Electrical inspector. Canine control. The school budget.
That's a hold
Hold.
anyway, right? Yeah.
Okay. Southeast Regional VOTEC. DPW, snow removal. The lighting, the DPW lighting. Okay. Waste disposal. Tree warden. Board of Health.
A hold on that one.
You want to hold that one? Okay. Women's Place Crisis Center. Brockton Area Arc. Old Colony Hospice. Council on Aging. The Veterans. The Library. Plymouth County Extension Services. Historic Commission. Veterans Memorial Day Parades. The debt principal. Debt interest. Short-term interest. Benefits. And the Water Department. Okay, so it looks like we have 3 that we want to chat about. Do you want to start with the assessors?
Sure.
Yes.
So I'm in agreement with the reduction of the 7,500.
Okay,
After like I said, I got the opportunity to listen to the selectmen's meeting today. Sounds like what was presented to us, A, wasn't necessarily fact, or at least needs more investigation. And then B, Jan, you'd made a comment at that meeting that a cycle or 2 ago, somebody there went from part-time to full-time. And the part of that plan was also a reduction in a contract that was in place, and that hasn't happened.
correct.
So for me, with the Board of Assessors, they can stay without that, make that adjustment, and then come back and ask for more stuff. That would be my approach.
Okay. How do other folks feel about that?
Is this 7,500, I'll point my question to David. Is this 7,500 the raises, David, that he mentioned?
No.
That he was still on board with giving out? Are they still going to give out raises in that department?
It's a consultant line.
This was a consulting line for,
Yeah, the
for them
consultant that
to-
they were supposed to get rid of 2 years ago.
Well, this particular 7,500 was for valuation of the utilities. For that consulting contract to assess the utility, the value of the utility properties.
Yeah, apparently there's no data to support how much we'd save or not save, I believe, so
And we
that being
can,
up in the air, they wanna,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a chance there could be more, we'd get back more than the $7,500 on tax, on an adjustment for taxes.
but there's also a chance that they could request an abatement
Right.
if we do that, so.
And somewhat, this money, like, if we give this now, we get nothing back. If we ask that, if we keep in mind the fact that the contract was supposed to be reduced when somebody went full-time, and if we see an adjustment for that, then I'd be more in line for this.
Yeah, and we can always revisit it next year too, when, hopefully maybe things have recovered a little more and money's not quite as tight. And we can see how it goes with other towns, maybe if they start valuing their own and how many ask for abatements and things like that. So it's not like we can never revisit it. But I agree with you. Does anybody disagree with this reduction? No?
Does it-
I just want to be clear, because I want to answer Jim's question, because there was a question at that point whether the assessor was going to still get a raise, but nobody else was taking a raise, and the answer to that is no, that is not occurring. So he's at 0, like everybody else is. Just so you know.
No, that is good to know.
does anyone feel, maybe Dave could go over the executive summary briefly that he presented to the selectmen? I don't know if you guys have read it. I heard the presentation. There's a lot of good data here, so
Yeah.
maybe Dave could give us a quick review here.
I think that would be helpful. I mean, this really talks about, the money coming in, and we're talking about spending it. It's good to know how much is coming in, right?
So,
Yeah?
all right, so I provide to the Finance Committee what I also provide to the Board of Selectmen last night. My job is to go through all the budgets. I go line by line. And I really, I think I do a pretty good job of understanding all of the requests. And where I don't, I ask for backup and documentation. So going line by line, I want to say a couple of things. One is that I want to say thank you. Our budget is only going to be up under the highlights 1.92%, which quite frankly is unheard of on a $36 million budget. You can see that it's up $699,000 year over year. And the major drivers of that increase is really two budgets, the local school and the increase in benefits. Benefits we really don't have a lot of control over. The bulk of that is either health insurance or state mandated retirement. They send us a bill, we send them a check. Part of the reason, or quite frankly, the majority of the reason why our budget is not up any higher is because 75% of our costs are normally labor related. And we're not having any raises throughout the entire town, minus one sector, but we're not having any raises throughout the entire town. And so obviously that's driven a lot of the savings. So I just wanted to say thank you in the original paragraph, because there were some people that were under contract that voluntarily re-voted to take the zero to help the town. And those that were not under contract voluntarily took the zero as well, because they recognized what was going on with the town as well. So I just want to say thank you to all the unions and non-unions, because they did that, and it was very much appreciated, and I want to be able to say thank you to that. On page 2, our overall operational budget will be up $737,000, which is a 2.16%. It seems a little weird because it excludes water, because you'll remember water department is actually lower year over year. So even when you take out that, the overall budget goes up. And again, it was just a couple of bullet points. One is that this budget did reflect all the 0% COLA raises, but for anybody that did have step raises, we were still, that's a contractual agreement, they're receiving those. So there are people in town that are getting a raise, in full disclosure. For example, the fire department, 1/3 of that department gets a step increase this year. They will receive a raise. They just won't receive an additional cost of living adjustment raise. Our department heads do not have step and track raises. So for example, when I say I get a 2% raise, it's a legitimate just 2% raise. When a union employee that has a step raise in that year, if that step is 4 or 5% and they get a 2% COLA, they get a 6 or 7% raise. So they are still getting their steps, but they're in the contract, so we funded that. We did reduce the school budget at the selectmen level by $222,000. I know it's held, so we'll discuss that more. But that was the equivalent amount of the raises that the teachers through their contract were going to receive. We'll talk about it more, but in full disclosure, that's part of this budget. At least on the town side, with what the selectmen can control, the budget represents no new hires, and it does not reflect any increase in staffing hours. And I always say this is a budget. We can never be right on dollar for dollar, because this is a budget. And right now, this is April, and we are budgeting for a fiscal year from July until June of next year, which is 15 months away. It's impossible to be able to throw a dart and hit it right on the button. So with that said, we have to have the ability to be able to transfer some funds in, and that's where you come in. You guys have a finance committee reserve. We funded it at $67,000. We've retained that $67,000. We've been fortunate. I think we've done a really good job of watching the numbers, so we've never had to utilize all of that. But you need to on a $36 million budget. You've got to have some flexibility in case you miss. So that is still fully funded. In reference to revenue, it's a little frustrating because I hear directly and indirectly that somehow our revenue is not down. And it's weird because when I read some of the posting on social media that gets sent to me, I do not watch it. I used to when I started here. I started on Twitter because I want to let people know, seriously, I want to let people know, say, look it, South Elm Street is closed, go here, do the, and I kept on getting other stuff back. So I just got off. I said, I'm not gonna do this, and I can't defend everything, right? So I don't really pay attention to it that much.
but the stuff gets sent to me, and I saw some posts that were disappointing, because he said, we're not seeing the revenues down, we're not seeing the town falling apart, we don't understand this. And I'm thinking in my head, so like, is a building supposed to crumble? Like, I mean, what is the, like, the outward, if, for example, if somebody loses their job, and you look at them, are they supposed to look poorer? You know what, I didn't understand that. So I want to make sure it's important to put these numbers in, because these are just real facts. So you will see that our budget is up $737,000 year over year. We've already disclosed that. Our receipts, now what does make up our receipts? Our receipts make up meals tax, excise tax, investment income, building permits, a police officer stops you and cites you, that type of stuff. That is down $644,000. Now, I will tell you that because I have a fiduciary duty to this town, that I have historically been conservative with estimates. And the reason being is because if I say, hey, it's going to be great, let's have really high estimates, and we don't hit there, then I've got to raise taxes to make up for the difference. So I would rather lean on the taxes lean on the receipts if I make a mistake, than lean on the taxes if I make a mistake. 2 years ago, our receipts were $3.2 million. That's actual numbers. This year, I sat with the treasurer, I've sat with the accountant, which we do every single year. We literally go through every single receipt line by line, month by month, and we are trending this year to be at $2,566,000. So that's a $700,000 difference. I can't use FY21 actual because we're in it, but that's where we're trending, is this 2.5 million. So that's $700,000. That's real money. Now, what makes up that loss? Basically, there are 3 components that are making up the loss. One is excise tax. That is our largest receipt. You buy a car, you're happy. 45 days later, we send you an excise bill. You're not so happy. But when you buy the car, it's always worth more, right? And then it depreciates over time, which means your tax liability goes down, so our receipts go down. The last 2 years, since COVID has hit, fewer people have bought cars. So as the age of the fleet in the town gets older, that receipt must go down. The second thing is that a bulk of our excise tax revenue comes from Enterprise, which is up on West Street. Every time they store a car there, we get a bill. We send a bill, they pay it. And that generates a lot of income. But nobody's renting cars. So they're not buying cars, they're not storing cars, therefore we're not sending bills, and we're not getting that income. That's a substantial increase. Meals tax is down a couple of $100,000. My guess is I don't have to explain a lot on that one. And the last one is investment income. You know, when we send you a bill, we collect about $22 million a year in taxes, and then we collect another $3 million in receipts. We get our state aid of $4 million. That money sits in a bank account. So even on low interest rates, we normally can make $300,000 or $400,000. Year to date, carrying a balance on average of $16 million, we've got $85,000. That's it. Like, that's a 25% of what we normally get. It's just because interest rates are so low. We're getting no money on that. So when I put all that together, we look at our state aid right now. The increase is $436,000 year over year. That's a plus. We raise it 2.5% as a budget. That means I'm in the hole by $355,000. Now, normally I'd be nervous because I would be saying to the selectmen last night and then to FinCom tonight, I'd be saying we have to cut $355,000. And I want everybody to be clear on this, whoever's listening on TV and whoever is in this room. This money, or these dollars, reflect after the cuts. This is after the cuts. So we have cut out of this budget $209,000 net, I believe is the number. After those, we are still in the hole by $355,000. And the reason I'm not worried about it is because the federal government has issued grant money that we are expecting to receive over the next 60 to 90 days, and it's $718,000 over 2 years, $359,000 this year, $359,000 the following year. And we expect although it's supposed to be for COVID-related expenses, I think I could just make a case to say my revenues are down 644 due to COVID. So therefore, I can use all of it. So I take that money, I plug it in, I'm even. So we're good. Like, we're okay. We'll make it. But we need that money. And that reflects this cut. So I know we're going to talk about the school in a moment, and if people want to replenish the $222,000, that's okay. That's a decision somebody else makes. I'm not a voter. But the only way you're going to do that is you will raise above 2.5%. Or you pull money out of the bank, i.e. stabilization account. And I have no problem speaking to this. I don't think you go into your savings account to pay raises. You go into your savings account, or you go into free cash, money that was generated in the past that is now sitting there. You go into that to save services. I come to you, for example, let's assume that the federal government was not giving us this money. And we said, how are we going to come up with $355,000? An option, and I'm, Maryland, don't yell at me. An option would be closed accounts on aging. It's $300,000. You could save $300,000 off the bat. But then everybody says, well, wait a second. I don't want to close accounts on aging, which I would be in favor of. Let's go into the bank account. Let's go into our free cash, transfer it, and save the service. That makes sense to me. But you don't go into it to give somebody a raise. Their job is whole. The service is being provided. So that's how my approach was to the selectmen, and they accepted that. So with that said, I don't want anyone to be nervous about the fact that we're upside down by $355,000. This money has already been approved. It's sitting at the U.S. Treasury for release. They're putting rules and regulations on it. We're following it. I have a meeting with them every other week, so we know what's going on. We'll get the money. We'll balance. We'll be okay.
Any questions on that? Thank you. So the other one we had on hold was the Board of Health, and I think that the recommendation is to put an extra $10,000 in there for the nursing services.
That's correct. So, look, our nursing line is $11,000 in that line. That's what we typically budget. And quite frankly, we don't always spend that amount. We budget $7,500 in that line for the nurse, and the difference is for supplies. So think like syringes, that type of stuff. This year, we blew that number out, right? But we got reimbursed through different federal funds. So we are well in excess, I'm told, of around $32,000, $33,000 of nursing services for this year. We spent the first money out of the budget, and then everything else is being spent through the federal government. But that money's not always going to be there. And I do not want to burst anyone's bubble, but I firmly believe a year from now, COVID will still be around. It hopefully will not be as pervasive as it is today. Hopefully life will be a lot more normal, but it's not going to just disappear overnight for various reasons. So we're going to have to make sure that we have the ability to have a nurse on staff. And we're not always going to have federal money to help us. The second thing is that the person that we have who's been doing a phenomenally excellent job is a retired nurse. And I don't want to say a lot because it's unfair, but she's retired. She didn't expect to become a full-time nurse, which is what we've asked her to do. Like, she's working a ton of hours, and she's supposed to be enjoying her retirement. So we already know that when she can take a break, that she would prefer not to potentially stay in the role. And that's fair. So we may have to hire someone else, and we may have to spend a little bit more money to get someone, because right now we're getting a great deal. We're getting someone who lives in town, who does an excellent job, and is willing to work below the market rate because she loves the town and wants to do the right thing, but she can't do it forever. So we may never spend this. I said this last night. If we continue to get federal funds, and based on the current administration, we may get federal funds for a long time, and that's okay. It's not a negative, just reality, is that we may never spend it, but I do think we need to have it just in case. So that's why I talked to the Board of Health. They think it was wise. The selectmen agreed, and that's why it's there.
Would it be for another part-time person, or?
I think it's just there to see what happens. Again, honestly, the only thing I want to answer your question as best as I can. Right now, we have about $7,500 in there for the nurse. We add 10, let's in theory $17,500. We're not going to get a full-time nurse for $17,500.
Right.
So it'll still have to be, in theory, a part-time type person.
Right. Okay.
Anybody have any questions on that, concerns with adding that 10,000 into the budget? No? Okay. So that leaves us with the biggest budget, I think, which is the school budget. So the recommendation here from the, from David as well as from the Board of Selectmen is to reduce their request by $222,000. What are people feeling about that?
Can I ask a question about the contract? So you're talking about other places like the fire getting a third because of it being contractual. What makes this 222,000 different for the school?
Yeah. So, there are two different raises in a contract. There are step increases, or in a educational contract, it's step and track, because as they gain educational credits, they can move down a step and move over a track. I hope I got that right.
Just like taking college classes,
Exactly.
all that kind of
Correct.
stuff, right?
So-
Extra certifications, things like that.
Correct. So all of those step and track increases in their contractual contract has nothing to do with this 222. They're gonna receive that. And from what I'm told, about 67% of the teachers will qualify for at least one of those this year. So if that math is accurate, about 2/3 of all the teachers will receive a raise. Now, they are under contract for their additional 2.25%. So they're gonna get that too. So what we talked about this over the last 8 or 9 months between the selectmen, the school committee, the previous superintendent, the new superintendent, and we were trying to have a level of equity throughout the entire town. And so the teachers don't have to take the zero. They're under contract. It's been proposed, that's my understanding. My understanding is that they had said no. I mean, again, I'm not there in the room, but that's what I'm led to believe. And that is the equivalent of the COLA increase, the 2.25%. And they disclosed that on this sheet. It says here, WBEA negotiated raises, 222,000. So that's not step and track. That's just the COLA.
That's what the fire and the police decided not to pay.
Exactly.
And everyone else in town, I believe, right?
It's like an,
Yeah, no,
it's
no,
an
it's
ethical.
everybody else, correct.
No, thank you.
The school, the staff, the teachers, the union at the school is around 120 individuals. They elected this year, right, wrong, or indifferent, not to open their contract based on what would happen at the selectmen's meeting. Unfortunately, what happened at the selectmen's meeting is we see now that they've been deducted $222,000. What it will do to the school system, none of us here can tell us what's going to happen. You can all guess at it. I don't even want to guess at it, and you guys all know how long I was there. Okay? Unfortunately, I'm not going to say that the teachers do not deserve this raise, and I'm not going to say that overwhelmingly that they do deserve it. This has been a difficult year for them. The comments that were made about the teachers were paid all year long and didn't have to work as hard was way out of line. Way out of line.
I agree.
They've worked twice as hard this year and had to put up with 4 times as much, I'll use the word crap, than they ever had to have done in the past.
Right. No, I agree.
It's unfortunate that we're in a situation, and David, you can correct me if I'm wrong, where we tried to make them agree to being a team player. Incorrect or correct?
Yes.
And unfortunately, what happened has happened. Again, I'm not going to judge you for a lot of reasons. I don't know what's going to happen over there. I'm not going to even guess. It would be nice if, in all honesty, 6 months down the road, David says, look, we have the money, let's let the teachers have their raise. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Because they're not gonna work any less next year, believe me.
Of course not, of course not. But I think what I'm seeing, and again, I'm not making my choice right now, but it sounds like the thought is that 222 is what everyone else in the town decided not to take.
Correct.
So to me, stepping back to what would happen in the future, that kind of sounds like a not Herculean task when you're talking $222,000 out of what, 13 million?
16.
Every penny is accounted for
Agreed. And again,
and is well spent.
yep,
But I
agreed.
also think the fire and the police also risked their lives and went way
I'm
above
not-
this
I'm-
year.
again,
And
I'm not
decided
going
not
down
to
that
take
road.
it, and were putting
'Cause I don't
themselves
think
more
it's-
at a harm of a way because they were facing the public one-on-one with any COVID cases.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Well, they do have ESSA funds coming in, so.
do.
Who do?
that-
The school, they still have 240.
What extra funds?
They have
ESSA.
ESSER
They can-
ESSER
They
funds.
have
They
to
can
spend
almost cover
it, they
this.
have to spend it where they're told to spend it.
And that's,
Pretty,
and that's
It's
up
not
to them
vague,
then.
it's clear cut.
My understanding of the budget was that that after having a little conversation with Jan, because I need a better understanding of what I'm doing here, is that they hired a teacher last year, so anything they get for money, they're choosing what to do with their budget. This is what they're choosing, they choose to use their budget that way, and I understand they have restrictions, but some of those restrictions can be flexible also, in the sense that how, like David said, he can account for his, the difference of coming, that his offset is COVID related. So they're choosing to use their budget as they will. After we've already voted on something, taking away $30,000 in electric, I have no idea how you can do that. Maybe 2,000, but 30,000 in 1 year, I'm really struggling with how they can do, so it's almost like I'm not saying they did this, but we don't see the background, but it was only like the electric bill was padded. So then they could then decide to use it somewhere else. As an accountant, that's not, you know?
All of these budgets are bottom line.
Yes, exactly.
So that, they all have flexibility to move something here and move something there.
Yes.
Which is good management, because
Yes.
as Dave said, we're looking at,
Yes.
18 months or 15 months of
Yeah.
summer. So, but in all fairness to everyone in the town, what we're looking at is trying to be equitable and asking for sacrifices. If you're asking for one group to sacrifice, it's really not fair to another group to not ask the question. And that's, I think, this is a reasonable solution.
Because some of the teachers don't live in town. And if they get a raise, it's our seniors that are gonna be hit by this, right? Their taxes could go up if we gave them the money. And as
well, they're
seniors-
going up 2.5 anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maximum
2.5%.
amount.
And we have to remember some of the taxpayers are reduced hours, they're, some people have been laid off, lost their jobs. I mean, we
Yeah.
have to really think about every aspect of
I mean, there's
the
a-
town.
There was
I
a
think we'll
family out
squeeze
on
by
the-
this year with the
Yeah.
school thing, but it's escalating every year.
Yeah.
Next year, it's next year, I know, but it's gonna be there again, I'm afraid, so.
Yeah.
It's just something, yeah.
So how are people feeling about this? Do we agree with this cut?
I do.
I do.
So, you're gonna call a motion.
Okay. Any other discussion on any of these other departments or budgets?
No, I think they're pretty well funded.
So we can vote on the whole batch, right?
So if that's the case, if you're in agreement with the budget that was presented from the Board of Selectmen, if you look at that,
$37 million. It doesn't sound like there was any changes to the numbers, so I would ask that you take a vote to approve that number, $37,065,683 as presented.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Mo. Thanks, Cheryl. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Sorry, was there?
no, I was
Yeah,
gonna say,
the
I
roll
was so
call.
used to saying it has to be roll call, but we're in person.
Yeah, but So we have one,
You're
two,
real,
three,
Dave.
four,
I know.
6 in favor, 1 opposed, is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
Do we have an obligation to, while we're done with schools, but still on schools, do we have an obligation at the town meeting to make sure that everybody's also aware of the ESSER funds and what's happening there? Just from a, I mean, it's the schools, they can do what they want with it, but if they hire 3 people, eventually those 3 people are likely to come back into town funds.
Yeah.
And I just, you know, just in transparency. I'm not questioning, you know, it's a grant, I think they do what they want. Maybe they hire people on a 1-2 year contract, depending on how long they think the grant's gonna go for. But at some point, you know, I mean, to a certain extent, they've seeded, if not next year's budget, the budget after, you know, to the tune of, what, 170, maybe 180 at that point, based on how
Yeah, I
things
mean,
change.
if they use those funds to hire people, and then they decide to keep them on and put them into next year's budget, you know, we'll have to deal with it at that point, right?
Yeah.
So to answer your question, Jeff, I think twofold. One is, it's within the scope of what you discuss at town meeting, it's within the budget. So it's
Within the scope, so it's an allowable discussion point. And then whether you should discuss it, I think everybody has to, you know, you have to speak your conscience. I mean, I can't advise to do it or advise against it, but you have to speak your conscience at that point.
Okay.
So it's not prohibited, right?
I would argue it's not prohibited because it's part of the budget process.
That's,
What was Jeff's point again? I didn't hear.
Because his question was, because these additional positions there's a possibility that going to hire these positions
That's right.
with the federal ESSER
Right,
funds,
right.
that eventually, as the federal funds dry up,
Right.
then it's going to then hit the tax rolls,
That's
so
right.
therefore it's an automatic increase in the budget.
That's right.
So his question, I think, was, do you have an obligation to have that conversation with town meeting?
because nowhere on the budget, Mo, is that $248,000. You know, like, we're gonna,
I mean, the assumption is that's how it's going to be spent, but we don't know.
Right, at the end of the day, the town is funding whatever the town funds.
Yeah, bottom line, yeah.
To the prior conversation, it's a bottom line budget, and
Right.
they
Yeah.
can do, you know.
I understand we
And
don't
to
know, but it's
speak
been,
to-
I'm
yeah.
sorry, go.
No, go ahead, no, were you done?
I was just gonna say, but it's been stated that,
Yes.
that's what that money would
That's
be
true.
used for.
It
So-
has been.
So that's why I would say.
It was in the
it's-
presentation.
Right, so I would say it's a fair assumption, because you're not assuming it, you've been informed.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's only an assumption because it hasn't happened yet.
Right.
But it does seem like they're pretty locked into doing it. And I think that's why, to Jeff's point, and I'm not advocating this, but what I'm saying is, to Jeff's point, because it's a legitimate budget conversation, because you could say, hey, you're gonna get $250 from the feds, lower the budget by $250, backfill it with the $250, now you made whole, now you can't add these 3 additional people.
Yeah.
Their argument is that they really need that money for those needs, but that's why it's a legitimate budget conversation, if you wanna have, but I can't, you know, you have to, it's your conscience.
I mean, that's what the vote
They
tech
won't ask
did.
me.
That's what the vote tech did. They took those funds and they reduced our assessment by those funds.
And then, to speak to this, there was the person they hired after the budget went through last year, and they were, and they have the right to do that, because it's a level funded budget, I get that now, but nobody knew they were gonna do that, right? And now it's become part of their.
It creates a future obligation.
Yeah.
But that ESSA money, and Jim and I would sort of disagreeing on it, could they use that to cover their COLA expenses, for instance, or?
No,
I don't think so.
no,
Yeah, I don't think so.
So,
No.
yeah,
But there
I'm
may
sorry.
be other things in the budget that they can use it towards that are related to COVID.
and
right?
then you've got the money.
Yeah, like the extra transportation. I know they said
Okay.
that they might have had
Either-
3
Either way,
kids.
that flows down to the.
Yeah, I mean, they might have had 3 kids on a bus and now they can only have 2 because of social distancing. That is a COVID thing, right? So
Okay.
there probably are some other
Right.
things that it could be applied towards. You know, I haven't read the rules, or
To
I'm not an
release enough
expert.
cash to cover,
Maybe,
yeah.
maybe. The last thing, I think, on the budget, on the, agenda is to vote on the message for the book, and there's a copy of, a draft of a message that I pulled together. I think David took a look at it. The numbers and, you know, if you'll give me the flexibility to plug in what those final numbers end up being, you know, if it's the 2.5% increase and the amount of free cash and that kind of stuff, I can plug in the numbers once we have them final. But are there other changes that anyone wants to make to this message? Is there anything you want to change? And, you know, all input welcome. This is really coming from all of us.
I think, maybe it's me, but a thank you to the departments, without naming them, but just thank you to the departments who did remain flat.
I can add that.
Free cash, again, David, is sort of unexpected monies.
So it's a combination of three things. One is additional revenue that we did not necessarily anticipate.
Yeah.
Which
So-
we don't have much of this year.
Yeah, I don't think we are. The second is whenever there's new growth. So for example, you put a deck on your house, we have assessed your house, I know I'm gonna get in theory $6,000, you put a deck, the deck goes up $50,000, I pick up $180 more in tax on that.
Right.
That's new growth. So that $180 now falls to free cash, because you pay it,
Right.
but I didn't budget for it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's new growth.
It could be new houses too, right?
Absolutely, yeah, new houses, new businesses, any of those things.
Okay.
And the third part to that is it unspent funds. So, for
So
example.
like
we-
our FinCom reserve.
Yeah, exactly, your
Spend it, right.
$67,000 unspent falls to free cash. So it's a combination of those three.
So it's $1 million?
Right now, it's $1 million,
About,
that's
yeah.
correct. I'm sorry.
Do we have any idea when the new housing is going down off of Scotland by any chance, or?
So that, they're building.
Yeah,
I mean,
we're
they're moving
actively
dirt.
working.
That's been going gangbusters,
Yeah, yeah, so I.
and there's no stopping it.
I mean, I think you'll see some homes probably by the fall. I don't know if they'll be complete, but you'll see homes there by the fall.
Mm.
Which also means potentially more students in the school, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The ultimate cost of the town is more. Fire, police.
It's more for everybody.
Any other changes? I'll add
No, it's
something
good.
to
It's
good to
explicitly.
me.
Very nice.
Thank you so much for
You're
doing
welcome,
that.
you're
Thank you
welcome,
for that. Very nice.
you're welcome. If anybody thinks of anything, you know, that you want to add or change, just shoot me, you can shoot me an email. I'll add the things to the departments for their diligence and their, you know, their sacrifice with the 0%. And we'll put in the numbers
Yeah, we'll put
when
it
we
in.
have them.
And if I may, I just want to take this opportunity, because I want to jump off what Jeff said, and quite frankly, a little bit what Jim said earlier too. This has been a really tough year. I mean, it's been tough on the teachers because they've had to do something they never knew that they had to do. And quite frankly, not everybody was gonna be good at it, right? But the same thing with every other department. You know, I'm always struck because I keep on receiving some criticism that the town hall's been closed and people must not be working. And I would just say this to you, because you're all there and you're gonna receive some of this as well, and maybe some of it is said at town meeting, and some people are watching this now. All services this town, all services this past year continued. Every service. The town hall may have been closed, but if you needed a dog license, you got it. You need a transfer license, you've got it. You need a Board of Health inspection, you got it. All services were still done. Police and fire did all of their runs. Teachers did all of their teaching. All the roads got plowed. So all the services got done. So there's no less work. But
A
until,
lot of people went over and above.
well, so now, think of all the additional work. The teachers had to learn how to do remote. Right? Police and fire had to go out there, here, ring, ring, I'm sick, I need your help, I've got COVID, and my fire guys are holding them, hugging them, carrying them getting him into an ambulance, sitting with him for 30 minutes in a little 4x4 box, and back in April, you thought if you got it, you died.
Right.
So everybody had more stress and anxiety on top of the fact that the services got done. And for my office, we were crushed because every time that baker made a change, restaurants are closed, they all called us.
Yeah.
Every employee called us. How do I get this? How do I get that? Everybody was, and they all looked at us. And by the time we got a memo done, the regulation changed and we had to write another one. So everybody still delivered services, but there was so much more stress, so much more anxiety. So I think it's great to be able to say thank you to all of those people for everything they did, because this has been a really tough year. And I can tell you, very few people call me to say good things, right? Because that happens. But very few people call me this past year to say bad things. So that means that all those services got done and people were happy with what we did. So again, I think it's really appropriate to say thank you to all of those departments for everything they did do.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, John talked about the contact tracing, the nursing services, all of that stuff that they had to do. I mean, everybody's really gone above and beyond. So, I guess we need a motion on the letter. I beg your pardon?
Can we talk about the third paragraph? of
Yep.
the letter?
Yep.
It just started off with, most departments have requested no increase in the contractual obligations. I don't know if is it needed to call that out?
We can remove it.
I'm just asking as a group, I'm not, just as I read it, and I read it a couple times now, we're kind of, I didn't know what it was supposed to.
Yeah, it was
to do in the
supposed,
letter.
it was supposed to be a recognition of, the fact that they're really doing everything they can to stay within their budgets, but maybe it's just not said well. And maybe it's better to just put that thank you in.
Appreciate all those that decide not to take a zero increase, does that sound better?
I don't know, I just, like I said, it's like most departments request no increase, and then if you're required, and mostly contractual obligations, most towns agree with no salary, and then we kind of call out the school. I just don't know if it's appropriate. Again, if it is, then I'm cool with that. To me, it read a little funky.
I can take the whole paragraph out if you want.
I don't know, I made a suggestion.
No, it does call it out.
I mean, I think it's, but I also think it's fact, and I don't
It
think
is
it's gonna be a
factual.
And
secret
I
walking
think-
into the meeting.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
I'm not,
I mean, I can try to reword it and soften it a little. I'm trying to explain
I don't
the
think
way
it's
that.
harsh, I just was curious, it's like, kind of like,
Yeah, I think it was really around how the budget is, coming together.
Yeah.
And maybe there's just a better way to say
And they
it.
might call out because somebody might say, well, why are they getting a $22,000 decrease? It might call questions, but then we have to, not the paragraph will call questions, but I think the budget's gonna call
Yeah.
questions because there's that line in there that's very glaring.
and it's not like I could do that.
Yeah. No.
I mean, I can just take that whole paragraph out and we'll
Which one
just
is
say
that?
thank you to everybody for all
This
their
one?
hard work and
No,
their
I'm not-
flat.
I'm just asking.
It's gonna be
if
known at the meeting, no matter what, so I don't, I mean, I don't.
Some
I
of
was away
these
on
are very
vacation
short,
and I had to
too.
call somebody,
Notice that.
what is going on? I didn't know I didn't know either, so.
Then
and so-
It doesn't, Scott, it doesn't, when I was saying that, I meant it could come out at the meeting.
I didn't know if you-
So-
Okay, we'll take it out.
Which one
Anything
is that?
else?
No.
Okay, perfect. So we have to take a vote on this, right?
What I would do is, I would ask them to take a vote to accept this in concept and provide her the flexibility to make the changes, plug in the numbers, and be okay.
Okay.
I make a motion to accept the executive summary with the caveat that changes can be made to make clarifications or add the appropriate numbers.
Thank you, Cheryl. Do I have a
I'll
second?
second it.
Thank you, Cindy. All those in favor?
All right.
Like,
Anybody opposed? Okay, and if if there's something else you want to say or throw in there, just shoot it over in an email and I'll add it in. Thank you.
When's it due by?
Warrants.
When's it due by?
Couple of weeks.
Couple weeks, I'll send you another draft.
Sometimes we're
Sometimes
waiting to
it's
go to
tomorrow.
press. Yeah.
We will get to freak out time, we're not there yet.
We have to meet on April 22nd to do warrant articles. Do we meet here again? Can we do that? You guys want to meet here again?
Yeah, gets me out of the house.
Okay.
I got to dress up.
That's on tape. but-
How many do we have, Dave?
There, I work there.
How many warrants?
How many warrants? I don't know yet. We're down. We have no bylaw changes, so that's helpful. A lot of times that eats up expense because the book is thicker and there's a
Yeah.
lot of debate on it. So that's a good thing.
We had some capital stuff.
We have a couple of capitals, and then our traditional. And then, as I've already explained to many of you, we'll have that TIF agreement on there as well for that project on Lincoln Street.
Okay.
So that's going to not be one article, that'll be multiple. I just don't know if it's gonna be 2, 3, or 4 yet, just because of some different things that we have to accomplish. But somewhere around 33 articles all told, and historically, we're usually low 40s.
It's a few.
Yeah.
But again, many of them are automatic.
Standard, yeah.
Yeah, they're standard. Chapter 90 funds, for
Yeah.
example, which, you just accept from the state and you have to legally vote to appropriate, which seems silly, but you do that. So
Yeah.
some of them are, 3, 4, 5 of them.
There's a few that we just do all
We
as a
just do
bucket,
the
right?
vote.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay. Anything else anybody wants to bring up? No? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thanks, Mo. Second?
Second.
Thanks, Scott. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Want to stay longer?
I wonder if there's ever been another.
Go ahead, Jim.